So, my journey began with a seemingly innocent letter offering me an all-expenses-paid scholarship from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Little did they know, however, the hilarious chaos that was about to unfold. Before heading to school, though, I cast the plastic surgery spell on myself to try and look as much like Agent 47 as I possibly could, and somehow ended up with a bald Megan Fox instead, which I guess is kind of the same thing. I set my first name to Agent, my surname to 47, and made myself a wizard as opposed to a witch because my prior experience with RPG games has taught me that wizards are far more likely to completely destroy the entire universe than a witch is. Anyhow, my horseless carriage picked me up along with my mentor Al Pacino, and we took to the skies, defying every law of gravity and physics and all of that good sciencey stuff. On the ride to Hogwarts, I took the opportunity to show Al Pacino my new prescription glasses that I just picked up from Specsavers. Unfortunately, however, before anyone got to have a proper look, a visually impaired dragon with a severe case of pink eye appeared out of nowhere and ate half of the carriage and the plump middle-aged man inside of it, mistaking it for a flying pumpkin. It was a rather traumatic experience for all involved, especially for the plump middle-aged man that got ripped to pieces. But as I fell from the sky to the floor down below, I thought to myself, I hope that poor dragon gets the help that he needs. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this hilarious, magical, cataclysmic catastrophe that, spoiler alert, results in the literal end of the entire universe, I have a brief word for you from today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, the mobile game that's taking the world by storm, in case you haven't heard of it. But even more interestingly is that Raid is full of tough bosses, all with completely unique ways of making you miserable and ruining your life. Now today, because I'm feeling sexy, I'm going to tell you how to clap the cheeks of two of my favorites, the Fire Knight and the Ice Golem. Now to kill the Ice Golem, use fire, and to kill the Fire Knight, use ice. Just kidding, to kill the Fire Knight, you need somebody who can flop out multiple hits to smash his shield and get to him, so the starting champ, Uphole, is a pretty alright job. And for the Ice Golem, make sure you bring someone that can crack out a strong party-wide shield to weather his storm, and then clap his cheeks real good. Speaking of clapping cheeks, Raid Shadow Legends is running a Valentine's Day event over at raidlovequest.plarium.com. So go over there and enter your ID for some cool in-game and real-life prizes, including Valentine's Day themed Raid champions and even Amazon gift cards worth up to $1,000. Also, by using promo code StValentine23, you can get a small Valentine's gift from the folks over at Raid. So what are you bloody waiting for? New players can use my link or scan the QR code on the screen right now to get a free starter pack with this neat in-game loot to help you on your journey. Now, back to ending existence as we know it. Fortunately, I happened to sprinkle a teaspoon of cement on my Cocoa Pops that morning, which effectively helped me to toughen and in doing so, I survived the 3,000-foot fall to the hard stone floor below without so much as a scratch. Al Pacino offered me some magic drugs, which I just stared at for a literal hour in real-life time, contemplating the consequences of my decisions. Then, after downloading Raid Shadow Legends, I just said, hamburger, and I slammed it down. Fortunately, it was just Listerine, and Al Pacino was politely trying to tell me that my breath smelled like swamp ass. That'll teach me for eating yogurt before bed and not brushing my teeth. I had no idea where we were or how I'd managed to fall from the sky and land inside of a completely covered cave, but that wasn't important. What was important was the strange pillar island thing that was sticking out of the ocean. I had to investigate. Al Pacino did a magic and rebuilt the bridge with a flick of his wand. Pretty cool, but nowhere near as cool as what I was going to do at the end of this video, which again was decimate existence entirely. Stay tuned. It's great. Still, we proceeded further along until we came to a swirly-whirly in the wall. Now, I did as many magics as I could at it, but it wouldn't smash. And then it just turned into a reflection of me, bad breath and all. And I finally understood once and for all the pain and suffering that Al Pacino had been going through since he picked me up from London. I liked it. Eventually, however, the reflection turned into a door, which seemed to lead to the reception desk of Gringotts Goblin Bank thingy, where a short-ass goblin was sat behind a podium about 5 times taller than he was. Now, it made no sense whatsoever, besides reinforcing on a constant basis that he was a little short-ass and probably had a tiny little peanut. Alas, the yogurt was starting to do very funny things in my tummy, so I asked the goblin if I could use the crapper. He did say yes, but we would need to take his steampunk drunk hog down to the bowels of the vault in order to get there. It was also a condition of entry that I was not allowed to leave the crapper until I had filled it entirely with crap. Not just the toilet itself, but the entire room with the toilet in it. As I headed in, I thought to myself, ain't that some shit? It was there that I discovered a strange-looking urinal trough in the middle of a big magic room and decided to go deep diving in it on the chance that I might find a lost wedding ring or a $1 coin for a can of Pepsi. Al Pacino did say that we should probably neutralize the pH levels before doing so, but with that done, I dove in head first. And amazingly, much to my surprise, it seemed like there was an entire living biosphere inside of the trough, complete with 2 little wizard men playing magic and everything. But then suddenly a group of gangsters from a rival gang came bursting through the door demanding our tuck shop money and our sneakers. Much to my surprise, however, and everyone else in the room, Al Pacino fired up real quick and told those gangsters that if they didn't get off his lawn immediately, he was going to enact his Second Amendment right to bear arms. I love it. Clearly terrified by the unexpected threat, the gangsters urged him to calm down and put it back in his pants before somebody got hurt. And so, just like that, my journey into the world of Hogwarts had officially begun, along with the end of the world. But more on that later. My first order of business, however, was to attend the sorting ceremony where I would be placed in a schoolhouse at the whim of a smelly talking hat. And obviously, because I'm an absolutely horrible person, it came as no surprise to anybody that the right house for me was Slytherin. Making new friends was hard, and despite my best efforts to gain the attention of those around me, I seemed to fail miserably. Maybe they just didn't like people flashing blindingly bright lights directly into their eyes. This guy, however, for a little bit of foreshadowing, was going to become my best buddy and also the one responsible for teaching me the cool magic trick that I was eventually going to end myself and everyone else in the universe with. Absolute best bloke. Anyway, as a new student, I needed to collect my student guidebook, which according to the annoying text that was constantly floating in front of my eyes was to be acquired from Professor Weasley. Admittedly, Ron looked nothing like I remembered. Looked quite a bit older. And despite my best efforts to keep an open mind, I couldn't quite figure out why an educational institution for teenagers had devices like this one all about the place. Must be a good reason, I thought to myself as I ran away crying. My first day of classes were actually pretty fun. Some old lady taught us how to wave our little wands around in the air and make sparks come out of them, or in some cases even use the force to make heavy objects like this dragon skull move around the room. And it also gave me an opportunity to inflict a major concussive injury on my best friend and classmate, Sebastian. Poor bloke didn't stand a bloody chance, just flung him off that table like a piece of TP with a boogie on it, mate. Then after that class, I had one with a funny old guy whose clothes seemed to have a mind of their own. They did things that clothes are not supposed to do. And though his clothes seemed to have a mind of their own, he didn't seem to have much of one at all. I met a polite cat who I patted, but all the while wished it was a dog instead, and then headed over to this crazy old man's shop in town to buy myself an iced out thunder stick that I would use to repeatedly cast unforgivable magic at any possible opportunity. I requested that it be made of apple with a dragon heartstring, extra bendy, and a whopping 14.5 inches long. The result was this black stick that literally could have just plopped off a tree outside somewhere and then shoved into a box. Now, it was a good idea that I picked up my wand because as soon as I stepped foot outside, a bunch of boisterous trolls came smashing through the courtyard with the intention of being my best friend. Unfortunately for them, I had been watching Dragon Ball Z that morning. After literally painting the entirety of Hogsmeade with troll brains, I raced back to Hogwarts to tell Al Pacino about what had just happened. He told me that I had to go to the secret underground catacombs of magic and do some stuff down there. And I'm not gonna lie, the place was pretty impressive, but the security system they installed, come on, you really expected a bunch of tin cans to stop me? I'm a maniac with a magic wand. The catacombs, however, held many spicy secrets, but the most spicy of all was the book at the end of the hallway, which I suspect they'd sprinkled chili powder all over because licking it burnt my tongue. Also, there was another trough. which naturally I plunged into head first. Inside, the two little men I saw earlier were still playing Magic, but this time there was another man and a woman too. It looked like they were all playing Magic together. Very, very cute. I then headed back to Al Pacino's office to tell him of my findings, and then completely blew the absolute furk out of everything in his office. The next class on my timetable was gardening, where some hippie lady was handing out free pumpkins to everybody. For some reason, however, I got a golf ball. We learned really cool things in that class, like how to torture a screaming plant, then use those tortured plants to torture your classmates by never returning them to their pot. Or at least not until everybody else's eardrums were bleeding and then burst. Later that evening, during my late night walk by the swamp, I noticed an old granny getting heckled by some mannerless whippersnappers with no respect for their elders. So I ruthlessly murdered them all with the cool magic tricks I'd learned earlier that day in class. Whoever said school was a complete waste of time? Huh? Shortly thereafter on my travels, I encountered a deformed little man with one big ear dressed in a potato sack. He called himself Scroat. Old mate Scroat told me that down past the Kraken there was a secret Kraken cave where, if you fed the picture of the Kraken a piece of moldy bread toasted between the cheeks of your dead enemies, you would gain access to a cave of unimaginable wonder. Instead, however, there was just a dead guy with no head. Being the curious soul that I am, I followed him deep into the woods and was immediately greeted with an army of big hairy spiders. If you just so happen to have arachnophobia, then this is for you. Upon finally relocating the headless ghost's corpse, which had supposedly been sitting there completely killed to death for hundreds of years, I rummaged around in his pocket and copped this weird looking piece of scrap paper. The funny man from the urinal troughs was now appearing everywhere, like even in paintings. He told me that the paper was magic and that I was a wizard. I could hardly believe it. A wizard? Me? I had no idea. But seeing as how my wizardry was now common knowledge around Hogwarts, I decided to get a broom. I just hoped that I wouldn't experience the same long-term fate as male bike riders did. The way I carved it up around the grounds of Hogwarts was nothing short of legendary. Everybody called me Sick Stick, and the ladies loved me. Not long later, I received a letter from Ron's owl telling me to come to the secret room in the secret wall under the secret stairs in the secret place that's a secret. When I went in, I was amazed to see that it was a literal hoarder's heaven. Mountains of completely useless trash that the owners simply couldn't let go of. I felt it on such a personal level that I nearly blacked out. But apparently, if I just closed my eyes and visualized what I needed in my life, the room would completely transform into exactly that thing. After all, it was called the Room of Requirement because it would fill whatever requirement my soul needed to be fully fulfilled. As it turned out, a gaudy pastel pink room with eerie Victorian architecture was exactly what I needed. I was now complete, or at least I thought I was, until I summoned several thousand pink chairs and was no longer able to move. Now I was really complete. My mate Sebastian told me to meet him in the Undercroft, so I put on the stupidest pair of glasses I could find and headed on down. He told me that he had something to show me, a magic spell called Corn Gringo. In order to show him that I was paying attention though, I used this new magic spell to blow the absolute shite out of the entire room before leaving, accidentally causing the whole east wing of the building to collapse on itself. But it was fine. Everything was fine. And the reason it was fine was because immediately after destroying a large portion of Hogwarts, I had Animal Class, where we got to brush and feed a strange and wacky bunch of Furby-looking furballs. It was nice and cute. Now, I caught wind of an illegal dragon fighting ring that was supposedly operating a short distance up the hill. So, naturally, me and a classmate snuck out of Animal Class to go and place a couple of bets. When we arrived, it looked like the main event was just getting started, so I hurriedly placed my bets using every cent I had to my name and ended up losing all of it. I was now officially a poverty-stricken youth and I had a bleak future ahead of me. Good thing I was a wizard. We did, however, stumble across another dragon that looked like it was getting a remedial massage from a bunch of creepy dudes with skull masks and wands in their hands. They were all burnt to a crisp shortly thereafter though. Guess they hit a nerve. Back at Sebastian's house, I met his sister for the very first time, who looked absolutely awful. Apparently, a witch cast a curse on her that gave her an incurable case of chronic gas. Their house, unsurprisingly, also smelled like a whole lot of sweaty gym ass. Just as I was leaving to go and cause trouble somewhere else, their uncle turned up and asked me who my daddy is and what he does. I told him my daddy's Arnold Schwarzenegger and he terminates people for fun. Sebi and I snuck our way into the ruins of a house not far up the road that supposedly had something in it that might cure his sister from her infernal gas problem. Instead, however, we found another painting on the wall that was missing 2 of the 3 fragments that should have been in it. Still, it was a start. A start to what would be the end of everything. I could hardly wait. A couple of hours later, nighttime had fully fallen on the land of Hogwarts, and it was pretty boring in the dormitory. So, me and my other classmate decided to go and break into a castle and rescue a couple of eagle horses. You see, some bad magic men had captured them and were using them to both produce eggs for their breakfast and also for winning horse races. It was extremely inhumane and something had to be done about it. So what I did was climb my way to the top of the castle and yeet every single one of them off, knocking them a good 200 feet to their death in the messiest of fashions. We then rescued the big bird horsies and flew off together into the sunset. Flying over the world down below, everything looked so tiny, even the ginormous Hogwarts Express. Then when we finally got far enough away from our pursuers, we pulled over in a field, and then I stuffed my ginormous bird horse into my tiny handbag because I am a wonderful person. I headed back to see what Al Pacino was up to and to show him my new Hannibal Lecter mask that I ordered off Wish. Then snuck off together into a goblin camp where the 2 baddies of this story were having a rondes vows to trade valuable Pokemon cards. When we got back to base to tell Painting Man about the fat stack of Charizards that one of them had, we noticed that Painting Man wasn't there and midlife crisis Mario was in his place. He told me that the princess was in another castle and to f**k right off. Anyway, it was now Christmas time at Hogwarts, and that could only mean one thing. Time to raid Mr. Slytherin. Mr. Slytherin's secret tomb and uncover all of his slithery secrets. In order to get through the door though, one of us had to cast an unforgivable dark magic spell on another, and seeing as I was clearly the more alpha of the 3 of us, I took one for the team. The door snapped and crackled and popped and then opened, revealing Mr. Slytherin's secret stash of spooky spells for sneaky students. Sebastian, however, wouldn't stop giving all his attention to our other friend, and I got jealous, so I started indiscriminately blowing everything up in the hopes that at least one of them would look my way. But Sebastian never did, and the other guy was blind. With Slytherin's secret spells for sneaky students in our arsenal, we made our way down into a tomb with the hopes of exhuming a bunch of dead people and reanimating them into our very own personal security entourage. Necromancy? Nuh-uh. Cheap labor, baby. And the means with which we were going to do it was supposedly this little pyramid device, which according to Sebi also had the potential to cure his sister entirely of her smelly farts. Debbie Downer over here wasn't keen on the idea though and refused to let us leave. So I did the only thing I could do and cast a zombie spell on him and left anyway. Unfortunately, however, upon returning to the surface, we were greeted with an all-out assault. The goblin gangsters had come to raid Sebastian's home in the hopes of finding me. And just when one of them was about to kill Sebastian's sister, he cast an unforgivable magic spell, though admittedly I was fairly certain that every spell I had cast up until this point was leagues more unforgivable than what he did. But anyway, his uncle flipped out and banished him to the Netherrealm with nothing but a stone pickaxe and a bucket. Either way though, we'd completed the painting thing on the wall and now everything was slowly starting to make sense. So anybody watching this video will never really know what actually happened because this video makes no sense whatsoever. But the basic gist of it is that this psycho got obsessed with sucking people's gas out of them and putting them into little bottles that she'd then sell on Craigslist as clean, renewable energy. The thing was that a fart in a bottle is not by any means clean, and so she was in very short order sued by every governing body in the land. But I knew what had to be done, and I raced down into the goblin mines quick smart so I could destroy the giant drill that they were using to try and uncover the ginormous stash of magical fart that was buried thousands of feet below the Earth's surface. Having at least momentarily thwarted the goblins, my collection of talking paintings told me that I should go and find Sebastian, who had supposedly gone full necromancer pyromancer down in a crypt somewhere, which honestly to me sounded like a lot of fun. So obviously I went. But just as he was teaching me his ways, his annoying uncle rocked up again and destroyed the pyramid thing, which angered Sebastian and by proxy, myself too. So then naturally the only thing that made sense at this point was this, and then maybe Sebastian took it a little bit too far and nuked him with an insta-kill magical spell that just insta-killed him until he was dead. Sebastian's sister, however, didn't seem that thrilled with the murder that had just taken place and used her fire magic to toast all of Sebastian's new friends in a display that quite frankly made me look like the biggest amateur in the entire world. For a magical prodigy unlike anything the School of Hogwarts had ever seen, her magic shat all over mine. Regardless, I went and told Al Pacino that we killed a man and that I'd be back soon with a ginormous lion with tentacles on its face. Then, though at first it looked like we were going to kill one another, Alpha recognized Alpha and we decided to partner up and fight crime together. But that never actually happened, and all we ended up doing was put his feet on the platform thingy, which opened up the magic door that looked like his face, because for some reason the whole door would only open up for him. Then, as soon as I got into the magic door, I was greeted once more with a vision from the bacterial biosphere I had become oh so familiar with. This time, however, things had progressed even further than I had imagined they would, and the final piece of the proverbial puzzle was revealed. As it turned out, Nutty Fart in a Bottle Girl wasn't only stealing everyone's farts, but also their souls. And to make matters worse, she was bypassing any and every biosecurity law that had been put in place by the Ministry of Magic, stipulating that farts and souls must never under any circumstances be stored in the same cute little bottle. As a matter of fact, she had created a ginormous magical ball of dark fart energy and was planning on using it to run every other power company out of business completely. Obviously, as a great capitalist, this was unforgivable to me, so one of the little magical fellows cast the insta-kill spell on her so good that she was dead. And now I knew exactly what those cheeky little goblins were after, the ginormous ball of buried fart energy. And I knew that my everyday wand just wouldn't cut it, so I went and got a super magical one that had bits of sparkly all over it. As soon as I exited the shop, however, I got jumped by a hamburger in a top hat that tried to abduct me in the middle of broad daylight. I could hardly believe it. He teleported me out to some sus abandoned carnival, but seeing as I wasn't seeking forgiveness from anyone, I had no reservations whatsoever in using every single unforgivable magic spell in the book, cooking everyone in one fell swoop. It was awesome, but smelled terrible. And then I smashed the hamburger with ease, completely obliterating him into nothing more than a puff of blood, guts, brains, and sparkles. After that, Al Pacino and I headed down into the caverns to try and stop the goblins before it was too late, and boy oh boy were there a lot of them. Fortunately, all the teachers at Hogwarts were after me for class evasion, and conveniently all arrived just in time to draw the attention from me so I could push on further to the final boss. I used my new magical wand to placate and gain control of the giant statues that posed absolutely no threat whatsoever and that I'd literally killed in every single dungeon throughout the entire game. But okay. And I was then quizzed by Al Pacino on what I would do with the dark magic once I finally got it. I told him that I would keep it all for myself and then unleash its devastating effects on the entire world. Probably not what Al was hoping for, but it's my life. It's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever, and neither would anybody else because we'd all be dead in a couple of minutes. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, the final boss rocked up and said that he managed to get himself a wand from AliExpress and was itching to take it for a spin, which he did quite effectively by turning into a dragon and then killing Al Pacino before my very eyes. The 3-phase boss battle had begun, and it was time for me to show that poor man a dragon who was the real boss by breaking all his balls and then blasting him with fire stuff. And don't get it twisted, he was a formidable foe, kind of. I mean, he tried real hard. And I killed his ass. Real hard. Then, like the absolute maniac that I am, I summoned all the dark energy floating around in the air into a nice little ball and snorted it all in one fell swoop. Al Pacino would have been proud. Or at least in Scarface he would have. Then after that, I just blew up the entire universe. Laters.